You know, people hate admitting this, but sometimes the very person you're supposed to protect the most, your own child, can end up becoming the one who hurts you. It's a painful truth I learned the day my son looked at me. It wasn't with confusion or even anger, it was with the cold confidence of someone who thought they had every right to control me, to own me, to erase the person I used to be. Please like this video and listen to my story until the end. Let me know which city you're listening from so I can see just how far my story has traveled. My name is Emily, and the day I'm about to tell you about is the day my world shattered. I was carrying grocery bags, my fingers starting to ache from the handles cutting into my skin. The weight of them didn't compare to the heaviness of what was going on in my heart. I was walking toward the guest house, the place they'd put me like an old piece of furniture shoved aside. This place, this estate, was something my late husband Robert and I had worked for. We built it together. He spent his life here, working tirelessly for what we had. But now I couldn't even get into the house I once called home. They'd changed the locks without even telling me. I heard a car door slam and I froze. The sound of a voice I hadn't heard in months cut through the air. Emily. It was Michael, my brother. He was the only person left who still said my name like it meant something. I stopped walking, feeling a wave of shame roll over me. It froze me in place. He saw me standing behind the house, not at the front door. Confusion flashed across his face. "Why are you coming from back there?" he asked, eyes searching the house behind me. And then I heard a voice I never wanted to hear again. "Because that house belongs to my wife and her family now." I turned, and there was Daniel, my son, leaning against the porch railing like he owned the place. He had his phone in his hand, his expression so casual, as if I was the inconvenience, the one who didn't belong. I stood there, my heart sinking, as he added, "If Mom comes near it again, I'll kick her out, just like last time." His words hit me like a slap, and suddenly, the world felt like it was collapsing in on itself. Michael stiffened next to me. His fists clenched, and I could see the anger rising inside him. I didn't even have to look at him to know what he was thinking. He was ready to explode, to defend me. But I didn't move. I just stood there in silence. Silence. It's the thing that protects you when you've been broken by the people you love most. It becomes a shield, a way to keep yourself from falling apart. Daniel didn't even flinch. He just looked at us, completely unbothered. He smirked at Michael and said, "Uncle Mike, relax. I've got this handled. Mom is fine back there. This is our home now." A part of me wanted to scream, to tell him how wrong he was. But the words wouldn't come. Michael stepped forward, but only just. I could feel the tension in his body, the years of restraint building up. "Daniel," Michael barked, his voice sharp and full of authority. "Watch your mouth." Daniel barely even reacted. He simply leaned back, his voice dripping with entitlement. "It's not like she's gonna be here much longer. We're moving on." Michael's anger was palpable, but I just stood there, quiet, feeling like the world around me was slipping away. I wasn't just standing outside my house, I was living in the delusion that I still had a place in it. Michael turned to look at me, his eyes full of disbelief. "Emily, what happened to you?" His question lingered in the air, heavy with sorrow. I couldn't answer him, not right there in the driveway. The weight of everything, the betrayal, the loss, the confusion, pressed down on me, and I didn't know how to explain it. I didn't answer him. Not then. I just shifted the grocery bags in my hands, forced my voice steady, and said, "Come inside, Michael. Let me put these things down. Tell me in the comments. And if you've dealt with something similar, share your story. You're not alone." Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life. Stay tuned for the next part where the truth begins to unravel further. We made our way inside the guest house, the small, lonely box at the back of the property. It was supposed to be a place for guests, overflow from parties, a guest room for friends. Now, it was my life. Silent piles of laundry, a couple of dishes left on the counter, the faint smell of something that used to feel like home. But it didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a storage unit. I set the grocery bags on the table, trying not to let Michael see the pain that was squeezing at my chest. Michael always had this way of looking at everything, noticing what others missed. Even when we were kids, he was the one who remembered all the details. I busied myself with putting things away, trying not to look at him, not wanting to face the question that was hanging in the air. But he wasn't going to let it go. "Emily," he said softly, his voice cutting through the stillness of the room, "I asked you a question." I heard him, but I couldn't find the words. I swallowed hard. "I heard you," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. It's not a short answer." He pulled out a chair and sat down, his hands folded neatly in front of him. No pressure, no jokes. Just that lawyer silence he always used when he was about to break down something painful, piece by piece. "It started with a piece of paper," I finally said. Not the yelling, not the hitting. Just a piece of paper. Michael raised an eyebrow. "What paper?" I paused. Just saying it aloud felt like I was unraveling a part of me that I couldn't put back together. "The will," I whispered. "The clause Robert put in before he died." Saying Robert's name in that tiny guest house, after everything that had happened, felt like opening a window and letting his ghost in. Robert was always the one who thought ahead. When he got sick, he made sure everything was set up, just in case. He sat me down once and explained every detail of what would happen with the house, the money, the land. He called it his way of protecting me. "You'll need to take care of this someday, Emily," he had said to me. "I'm protecting you from the future, including the parts you don't want to think about." At the time, I didn't understand what he meant. I thought I did, but now it was clear. He put everything in my name. The house, the savings, everything. But there was one condition. Daniel could only touch any of it if he showed he was stable, responsible, and respectful towards me, I continued. No violence. No threats. No desperation. That was the deal. Michael sat back, absorbing it. "That sounds like Robert," he said slowly. "The problem," I said, my voice cracking, "is that I never told Daniel about it. I thought I could just guide him quietly, like a guardrail he would never notice until he got older. I thought he'd understand eventually. But someone found out, didn't they?" Michael asked. I nodded. "Jessica. She found it." The name stung on my tongue. I could still hear her voice, her soft whispers creeping through the walls of my grief. It was right after the funeral. The house was full of casserole dishes and empty sympathy. I was so tired from the weight of it all that I barely had the strength to fight her off when she offered to help me sort through Robert's things. She went into his office alone, rifled through binders and files. And that's when she found it. "She saw everything," I said. "She saw the clause. And then she went to Daniel. She didn't come to me first. She went straight to him." I could still hear the poison in her voice that night. "Are you the man now?" she had whispered to him, her words soft, but laced with venom. "How can your mom still own everything? How are you supposed to be a man if you're still living like a little boy?" I'd stood frozen in the hallway, hearing her words wrap themselves around Daniel like a noose. I didn't see it at the time, but I could feel the shift after that. His eyes began to change when he looked at me. Slowly, over time, the little comments about my house, about how I was still running things, became more frequent. And then, it wasn't just comments. He stopped asking for permission. He started demanding. That was when it all began to break. Tell me in the comments. And if you've dealt with something similar, share your story. You're not alone. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life. The truth that had been festering under the surface was starting to pour out, and there was no turning back. But would it be enough to turn things around, or was it already too late? Stay tuned for part 3, where things start to escalate in ways no one could have predicted. It all started to unravel after that. In the quiet, when you think no one's watching, the cracks in the facade begin to show. The silence between Daniel and me, the tension, it was all building up. And even though I had tried to hold on to the hope that my son would snap out of it, that he would remember the boy I raised, those hopes began to fade. The house, once a place full of warmth, felt cold. It was a week after Jessica found the will. I remember it so clearly. I was in the kitchen of the main house, chopping vegetables for dinner, not sure if anyone would even want to eat. The TV played quietly in the background, the hum of a sports game filtering in through the walls. The house used to be full of life, full of Robert's laughter. Now, it felt like a hollow shell. I heard the footsteps before I saw them. It was Daniel and Jessica. They moved like they'd rehearsed it. Daniel was standing taller, chest puffed out, like he was wearing a crown. Jessica was a step behind, her arms crossed, her eyes a little watery. It was like she was trying to sell some sad story I wasn't buying. "Mom," Daniel said, his voice flat, dropping a packet of papers on the counter. "We need to handle something." I wiped my hands on a towel, my heart pounding faster than I wanted it to. My hands were shaking, but I didn't let it show. I could feel the weight of the papers as I picked them up. "What's all this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's just a temporary property release form," Daniel said, his words so casual, like he was doing me a favor. "So I can manage things better, taxes, insurance, all that." He shrugged, like it was no big deal. "You're still here, but legally, I do the heavy lifting like a man's supposed to." I stared at him, blinking back the sting of disbelief. I could feel my chest tighten. "Temporary?" I echoed, trying to make sense of it. "I don't understand this." "Your dad already prepared everything. There's no rush to change anything." Daniel's jaw clenched, his eyes darkening with something I couldn't quite place. "My dad's dead," he snapped. "I'm the man now. I should be doing this. Why do you have to control everything, even from the grave?" His words hit like a slap. That word, control, it cut through me. It wasn't about control. It was about responsibility, about keeping things together for the family. But in his eyes, I was the villain. He was trying to convince me, and himself, that this was the right thing to do. "I'm not signing anything I don't understand," I said, pushing the papers back toward him. "If you want to manage something, we can sit down and talk about it, but not this." Jessica stepped forward then, her voice softer but no less insistent. "Mama Emily," she said, her voice trembling, "we're just trying to build something. We can't do anything big with everything stuck in your name. It's stressing Daniel out. He's not sleeping." I watched her, feeling a flicker of doubt stir. The tears in her eyes, were they real? Or was this just part of the performance? I knew enough by now to trust my instincts. But even so, the words made me question myself. I picked up the papers again, staring at the legal jargon, my heart racing. "No, I'm not signing," I said firmly. "Not now. Not ever. Tell me in the comments. And if you've dealt with something similar, share your story. You're not alone." Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life. That night, things got worse. I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the will, about Robert's final wishes, and about how my son had just tried to steal everything I had worked for, everything Robert had left behind. But I didn't expect what came next. The next day, the tension in the house hit a breaking point. Daniel came at me, this time with his hands, and I didn't know how to protect myself. It wasn't the first time he'd raised his voice, but it was the first time his anger was so close to my face. He pushed me, shouted at me. His hand slammed into mine, hard enough to bruise. I froze. In that moment, everything stopped. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there, taking it from the child I had raised. The weight of it crashed down on me. How had it come to this? How had my son, the one I carried in my arms, the one I rocked to sleep, become this person? I could still feel the sting of his hand on my cheek, a reminder of everything that had gone wrong. He had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. But I had no choice. I had to protect myself. I didn't go to the police. Not yet. I didn't want to believe it was real. I didn't want to believe that the boy I loved was gone. But Michael, my brother, knew. He saw everything in me, the hurt, the fear, the confusion. "Why didn't you report him?" he asked me, his voice low and full of disbelief. "Because he's my son," I whispered. "He's all I have left of Robert." I kept thinking it was just a moment, that he would come back to me. Michael's face hardened, his jaw tight. "He's not the same boy anymore, Emily," he said softly. "And you're not helping him by protecting him from the consequences." Days after Daniel's outburst, I could feel the shift in the house. It was no longer a home, it was a battleground. The quiet that once comforted me now felt suffocating, like the walls were closing in on me, the weight of betrayal pressing down harder every minute. I tried to push it away, to pretend like everything would be fine if I just stayed quiet long enough. If I just kept the peace, kept hoping. But I couldn't keep pretending anymore. I couldn't keep hiding behind my silence when my son had crossed a line I couldn't ignore. The love I felt for him, the mother in me, had been twisted and bruised. One afternoon, a few days after the incident, Jessica's parents showed up unannounced. It was like they were trying to bring peace, but the air between us was thick with something more sinister. Her mother was holding a pie, fake sweetness to cover the rotten core beneath. Her father, with his businesslike demeanor, carried a briefcase, his every movement calculated. I was in the living room when they arrived, trying to settle into the discomfort that had become my new reality. The house felt emptier with each passing day. It wasn't just the space, it was the absence of Robert, of the life we had built together. I wasn't sure if anyone could ever fill that emptiness again. Her father sat in Robert's chair, the same one he used to sit in after a long day, smiling like he had any right to be here. "We know losing Robert has been hard on you," he said, his voice oozing with insincerity. "I'm managing," I said, keeping my tone steady, even though everything inside me screamed for him to leave. "We can see that," he continued. "That's why this conversation is so important." I felt the blood drain from my face. My heart was already pounding in my chest. "What conversation?" Jessica's mother placed the pie on the table, her eyes soft, yet calculating. She didn't touch the pie, just stared at me as if waiting for me to crumble. "What conversation?" I asked, keeping my voice even. Her father opened his briefcase, and my stomach dropped. Inside, there were papers, just like the ones Daniel had thrown at me. Legal documents. My name, the property address, and language about transferring management rights to Daniel, as if it had ever been his to take. I tried to stay calm, but inside, I was screaming. "You and my son-in-law are at a crossroads," he said smoothly. "Daniel is trying to step into manhood. He feels blocked by everything being in your name. It's making him feel like a child." Blocked? By me? It hit me like a slap in the face. I was the obstacle now. Not the mother who had loved him, who had fought for him, but the woman who was standing in his way. "It's not healthy for him to live like this," he continued, glancing over at Jessica, who was standing there watching me, her face full of manufactured sympathy. "A good mother lets her son lead when it's time." Those words stung, cutting through me like a knife. A good mother lets her son lead. I could almost hear my own mother's voice, the way she had always told me to let boys be men, even when they were wrong. I felt my knees weaken, but I didn't show it. "I've worked for everything here," I said, my voice cracking. "This house is mine. It was Robert's. And I'm not handing it over to anyone." Jessica leaned in, her voice shaking but rehearsed. "We're just trying to build something," she said, her eyes wide, tears welling up, but I knew it wasn't genuine. "It's not about the house, Mom. It's about Daniel finally having the chance to be the man he was meant to be." I wanted to scream at her, to tell her how she had manipulated him, how she had poisoned his mind. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I stood there, facing the reality of what they were trying to do, take everything and leave me with nothing. I looked down at the papers, the words blurry from the tears I refused to shed. But the weight of them was suffocating. I could feel my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. "Please, Emily," Jessica's mother said softly, "it's time to let go. It's time for you to step aside. Tell me in the comments. And if you've dealt with something similar, share your story. You're not alone." Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life. I couldn't hear her anymore. The suffocating pressure of their words was too much. My mind raced, trying to find a way out, a way to keep my home, my life, my dignity intact. But I knew the truth. They were already taking everything. I didn't sign the papers that day, but I couldn't help but wonder if the damage was already done. Their words, their manipulation, were starting to sink in. And it wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about me. About the way they had slowly turned my own son against me. That night, I stayed in the guest house, feeling smaller than I ever had before. I had been beaten down by my own flesh and blood, but I couldn't let them win. I couldn't let them strip me of everything I had left. But deep down, I knew this fight wasn't over yet. And soon, I would have to face the consequences of my choices. Stay tuned for part 5, where the final confrontation takes place and Emily is forced to make a decision that will change everything. The days that followed felt like a blur. Every moment, every glance from Daniel and Jessica's family, every word they spoke, was laced with manipulation and control. But I couldn't ignore the reality anymore. I had stayed silent for so long, thinking if I kept quiet, if I kept protecting him, my son would come back to me. But that boy, the one I raised with so much love, was no longer the same. The house felt colder than ever. Every corner, every empty room echoed with the absence of Robert. The silence, once peaceful, now felt suffocating. And the space where I had once been a mother, a wife, now seemed like a battleground. I was losing my home, my son, and the life I had built, piece by piece. But there was no going back. I couldn't let them take everything from me, not my home, not my dignity, not my future. Then, one morning, I heard the knock on the guest house door. The sound of it hit me like a drumbeat, a warning. I wasn't ready for what would come next. I had tried to prepare myself, to brace for it, but I hadn't anticipated how quickly it would all fall apart. I opened the door to find Michael standing there, his expression unreadable. He didn't say anything at first, just stepped inside. The air between us was thick, like something heavy was hanging in the balance. He didn't need to say anything. I could see it in his eyes, he knew what was coming. "You need to file charges," Michael said quietly, his voice steady, but the weight of his words hit me like a freight train. "What?" I whispered, my breath catching in my throat. "Michael, no. I can't." "You have to," he interrupted. "They've crossed a line, Emily. This isn't about your son anymore. This is about what they've done to you. You can't keep protecting him. He's dangerous." I shook my head, panic rising in my chest. "I can't lose him. He's my son. If I file charges, that's it. He'll never come back to me." Michael stepped closer, placing a hand gently on my shoulder. "The son you're trying to save isn't the one who's standing in front of you anymore. The boy you raised is still there, but he's being buried under everything they've put in his head. And right now, Emily, you need to protect yourself." His words hit home, but my heart still ached with the weight of them. Could I really send my son to jail? Could I let go of the hope that he would come back to me, to the boy I knew, the boy I loved? And then I heard it. The shouting. It started in the distance, muffled at first, but growing louder. The sound of Daniel's voice, sharp, angry. And then Jessica's, pleading. It was coming from the main house. I froze, my heart racing. This wasn't just a fight. It felt like everything had come to a head, like a storm was about to break. I ran outside, my legs trembling beneath me. Michael followed closely behind, but I could barely hear him. My thoughts were consumed with the noise, the chaos that was unfolding right in front of me. When I reached the front yard, I saw them. Daniel was yelling at Jessica, his hands clenched into fists. He was pacing back and forth, his face red with anger. Jessica stood a few feet away, her face tear-streaked, pleading with him to calm down. But the violence in his voice, the hatred, was unmistakable. "I don't care what they say," Daniel shouted. "This is my house. My life. You're just trying to control me like she did." "Daniel, please," Jessica cried. "You're scaring me." I felt a sickening pit form in my stomach. I couldn't stand there and let this continue. I had to stop it. "Daniel," I shouted, my voice louder than I thought I was capable of. He stopped, his eyes flashing with confusion, then rage. "What, Mom?" he snapped, turning toward me. "You here to tell me what to do again?" I stepped forward, my heart hammering in my chest. "No, Daniel. I'm here to protect myself. From you." The words stung. I hadn't meant to say them, but they were out now, hanging in the air between us. The shock on his face was almost more than I could handle. I saw the pain in his eyes, the hurt of a child who still wanted his mother's approval, but I couldn't back down. I couldn't let him control me anymore. He took a step toward me, his eyes narrowing. "You think you can just shut me out? You think you can take everything from me?" I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "I'm not taking anything from you, Daniel. But I'm not going to let you take anything from me either. Tell me in the comments. And if you've dealt with something similar, share your story. You're not alone. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life. I knew what I had to do. I had to let go. Not just of the house, but of the idea that everything would somehow be okay if I just kept protecting him. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy, but it was the only way forward. I filed the charges. It wasn't something I could take back. It wasn't something I ever wanted to do. But I knew it was the right thing. The courtroom was cold, impersonal. The judge's voice was steady as she read through the charges. But all I could focus on was the look in Daniel's eyes. He was sitting there in handcuffs, his face a mask of hurt, betrayal, and something else, something I couldn't quite name. When they asked me to testify, I did. I told them the truth. Not just the facts, but everything, the pain, the betrayal, the brokenness of a mother forced to stand against her own child. I didn't sugarcoat it. I didn't hold back. I spoke of the first slap, the first moment I realized my son was no longer the boy I knew. And when it was over, when the gavel fell, I felt no joy, no relief. Just the weight of the choice I had made. The choice to protect myself. To stand my ground. The road ahead wasn't easy, and I knew it would take time. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had control over my own life again. Daniel had his own journey to walk. And I had mine. As I walked out of the courtroom, the sunlight felt different on my face. It wasn't soft like it used to be, it was bright and hard, but it was honest. It was my life now. And I would reclaim it, piece by piece, starting with the truth.